It's my pleasure to introduce someone I worked with since she's been here, and that is President Philomena Mantella. And I will tell you that I have seen a woman who brings to this 5th presidency of Grand Valley unbridled energy, a history of documented, substantive, and extensive work in higher ed, what I call an excessive sense of responsibility to our students, her family, her colleagues, and the future of Grand Valley State University. Now, we all know that after President Mantella came, we had a pandemic. And she led Grand Valley through that pandemic. And I can attest to one example of her leadership when she asked me if we could call all the students after they had gone home when the school closed. I said, what? Call all the students? So we did it. We maybe commandeered, actually we had a lot of volunteers, a fabulous team. We called undergrad and graduate students. We didn't email, we called them. And if they weren't there, of course, we left a message, and as they were trying their hand at distance learning, we were right there with them and trying to support what they needed. So thank you, President Mantella. It was a great initiative and a lot of phone calls. President Mantella has expanded the university's offerings and potential learners with programs aimed at non-traditional and underrepresented students. She developed a national alliance to raise underserved student voices, improve pathways to graduation, and brought student insights forward in institutional transformation. She collaborated across sectors and embraces the role of education in shaping lives and communities. On the little personal side, President Mantella's engaging and approachable manner, and honestly, her unyielding strength and kindness to her 94-year-old mother who lives in Grand Rapids, her husband Bob, and her 3 sons and their families have endeared her to me. I have loved working with her. And I must add this, she has a great sense of humor. So, President Mantella, if you'll come forward, we appreciate your being here.
Thank you. So, how many of you know Pat Waring from, something other than like community leader, right? So who else would you give please call 22,000 students to than Pat Waring and expect to get it done? So thank you, Pat, for your leadership and your friendship and your mentorship as I join the university and this wonderful community. I think I need to be prisoner behind this, right? Because we have folks online. You don't want me walking around. Yes, Kara's saying yes, stay where you are. So you feel really far away, so if I do like a lot of hand gestures and things, you'll know why. I said to Ron, when we engaged again, since 2019 was the last time I was here in front of you, you didn't tell me there was going to be a global pandemic when I came. And he said to me, you didn't ask. So obviously, Ron, you had the secret, for all, so I would say you didn't share. And I do want to thank Nancy Lubbers. As Nancy, I've seen you so many places over the course of the summer, and you and Don continue to lead. I was going to say support, but it doesn't fit. You continue to lead our community and the continuity of leadership at Grand Valley, and you've been a great support to me. So thank you, Nancy. Can we give her a round of applause, please? My husband's still not sure what to be called, you know, First Lady. He's like, am I the first husband, or what, am I the first gentleman? You know, he's still trying to figure it out. So my talk today is really going to be about the university and where we're going, the sort of state of the university. You're going to have an opportunity to meet a lot of our new leadership, starting with the Provost, which I'm really excited about, all of our new leaders. There has been, like in every organization, just a tremendous amount of change over the past several years. Not only in everybody's individual life, right? How do we learn to be remote? How do we learn to be distant from one another? How do we learn to care for community and care for those less fortunate? How do we learn to learn in new ways and new circumstances? And like all organizations, we felt the Great Resignation. We had a voluntary retirement incentive program for those who felt ready and that they didn't want to return after the pandemic. So we have a lot of new leadership. But you will hear and you will experience for yourself that these are individuals who are here because of the Grand Valley that you have been a big part of building. The Grand Valley that is so special and that is born of a community. The Grand Valley that is affordable and accessible to the average citizen. A Grand Valley that supports the work with enterprises and as well as the work with individual learners. So you will meet a group of individuals that carry the roots of this institution at their heart and are really committed to, yes, having an institution that is responsive to the changes our students will face, but also that is rooted in the history and the past of our institution and all of those through lines that make it so special. So it's been a challenging few years, as you can imagine. You come into an institution, probably my first 6 months was really about listening, having conversations. We called them huddles, to really convey that we wanted to hear from people, not only where they saw us, but where they saw us going as an institution. And then a few months after that, you find yourself in an unprecedented time. And the institution and the leadership is getting to know each other. But yet, this is a time when you're saying trust in where we're going, trust that we'll get through this well. And there's not yet really a strong foundation or basis. But what is true of Grand Valley is that I like to think about it as the community sees the world in a positive frame. They see the world in a way that what more can I do? How can I serve? Let's think about the blessings we have and not the deficits we suffer from today. And so it was when people, you know, who knew me well said, how you doing, you know, coming into a new institution at a period of time like this. I said, I'm doing really well because I'm at the one place I would want to be at and the kind of community that I knew would respond well and positively during that global pandemic. Uncertainty is really unsettling, but it's really where creativity is born, right? I mean, it's really where sometimes we find ourselves or question our values or question how we're spending our time. And so we did come through the pandemic strong. The institution, I think, did a lot of things, as Pat said, to try to be sure that we were being true to who we are, very focused on our relationships during a period where students were distant, being sure that our community was safe, being sure that we were not adding to the learning gaps or the maturation gaps that students were going to experience from having to be isolated for periods of time. And you probably all have relationships, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, great nieces, great nephews, that you have seen either thrive, sort of sit in neutral, or struggle during this period of time. So why do I take you through that journey to today? Because I think that Reach Higher, which is on your tables, this little card that is sort of our strategic plan for the future, is even more important coming out of a global pandemic where students will carry with them, adults will carry with them, shifts in their life and in the way they learn into a new environment. So, I want to just talk you through, because you can see the plan is not that long, right? It can be held on a card. And that's by design, because what we really wanted to convey with the university's strategy was that everyone in the university would contribute towards the constructs that were most important to the future. And so the mission statement evolved as we empower learners for their pursuit, passion, and purpose. Empower learners for their pursuit, passion, and purpose. Empower is different from center. We've always been student-centered, right? We care for them. We support them. We communicate. We see the whole self. But empower means we know their assets. We know their struggles. We know not just their major and their minor, but their mission. What do they want to do with their life? Their passion, their purpose. Now, I don't know, at 17 years old, which a lot of our students come in 18 years old, that we're clear on those questions. But shouldn't an institution stand beside them as they evolve? Be here to reflect with them as they reconsider choices? Be able to integrate things that seem distant. Well, I want to be a business major and I'm really interested in bioinformatics. How do you help them to integrate their thinking? So that simple sentence was really about, let's take it beyond majors and minors to a place where we could integrate our offerings and place them at our learners' disposal in such a way that we could acknowledge what they bring to it, what they need to develop, and where they want to go. In addition, we want to continue to enrich our societies, our community, as I have to put on my glasses these days, through the excellence of teaching, through active scholarship, and through the advancement of equity and public service. We are a public institution. We are an institution that wants to serve those who feel they're ready, those that feel they need to get ready, those that feel they have resources, those that question whether they have enough resources to be able to experience a college and university education. There are 3 commitments that we settled on as a university community. I would say this plan, I'm really proud of our community, because a lot of universities took a choice that we need to focus 100% of our energy on the present. We're going through a very unprecedented time. And we struggle with that question, right? Resources are tight. People are choosing making different choices about remote or place-based activity. And we struggled with the question, could we grapple with a plan for the future at the same time we are in this moment? And we settled on the answer that we must. We absolutely must. We can't lose what we thought was going to be a year and then became 2 years and then the better part of 3 years as we grapple with the present. We got to stretch one arm and one leg into the future as a community. And that was hard. That was hard because we all had extra work and extra pressures we were carrying along with us. So we did settle on three commitments. One is to empower the education. And I've talked about that in the mission statement. But let me just bring a little more color to that. That means that we do work to really assess those strengths and those needs of students, that we ask the questions of passion and purpose and mission, and we know it early on, and we can maintain that tapestry as it changes and grows. Another component of that is that we embed experience so that students can test what they're thinking in a co-op, an internship, a service learning, a study abroad, and can broaden their views. The second commitment we made as an institution was for lifetime learning. We know, and I'm going to quote the provost, because one of the things that I took away when the provost was interviewing here, she said, I worked on a degree in computer science. Well, we all know computer science changes every day, right? You know, the technology just advances so fast. And she said, and in order to inspire the community to think differently, both internally and externally, I called it the 60-year degree, right? Think about it in that frame, right? Am I right, Fatma? I got this right? See, I was studying you when you came. So a 60-year degree, when you think about it, right? What we're teaching today, you know, how does that last a student over 60 years? So in that commitment of lifetime learning, there are two constructs, really. One is a construct that we need those foundational skills. Well, here, let's come back to Grand Valley's history, liberal education, the competencies we need for a meaningful life, the competencies we need to navigate change. So one part of this is, let's be sure we're, yes, preparing students for their first job, but also to be sure that they're getting those human skills that will carry them throughout the life. And the second part of this is really to be able to respond and relate with students once they leave us, or adults that are a part of our community and want to be with us, in a format that works for that working professional's life, that works at different life stages. So not everybody's going to come and say, I can kind of leave my family duties aside, and I'm going to stop my job, and I'm going to come and secure my next degree for the next 4 years. They needed different formats and different structures. And we need to recognize that the three things our alums tell us they need, right, Troy? Because you were a part of this focus group, was they need continued skilling on competencies on learning. They need a relationship that continues with their university community, the individuals that impacted their life, and they need the connection to our networks. So we had to recognize that we had to operate not just at a place where you're a great alum and you're coming back and you're enjoying a Grand Valley experience, a football game, an event, but we are connected with you on those three vectors. So that's the second commitment, lifetime learning. And the third is educational equity. We have to realize that one of the things that happens in education, and you've probably been reading about it as you read so much around the period of time in which SATs and ACTs weren't available to young people. There's sort of been a resurgence at what creates the sort of promise, aptitude, readiness, and success in college around the kind of non-cognitive traits, the traits that are the human traits: persistence, grit, the willingness to accept and look for new information, the willingness to put yourself in spaces and communities that are different from yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So the commitment to educational equity means that we're looking at the opportunity to fulfill promise, that we're supporting all of our communities, those that have had the privilege and pleasure to have a strong high school experience, to have SAT and ACT prep, and to come into college with, a good portfolio of college-ready courses, and those that we need to reach into those high school years. You mentioned the consortium I lead around bringing learner voice into education. 6 institutions across the country that are working together at helping 11th and 12th graders see college as a possibility and helping them elevate their voice as a structure for empowerment. So all of these concepts are really to try to close the gaps that exist when people come from low-income backgrounds in college success, when they're coming from communities of color in college success, when they come from first-generation families. So those are our 3 commitments. They're very simple. I hope they're profound. And I'm really proud and really excited that our university community, through all of its bodies, this is, a shared governance environment, and we went deep with our faculty senate. We went deep with our student senate. We went deep with our administrative professionals and our support staff, and created lots of forums for people to comment on this journey we're going to take together. So I hope that gives you a construct for where we've been. We stand firm and well-supported, well-structured for the future. We have strong leadership. We brought in a great crop of faculty, and we have a plan to guide us that everyone is contributing to. Sounds amazing. We've got our challenges, as we begin to just work with how people engage again in face-to-face environments, as we come together as a university community and to really situate ourselves in this bold plan for the future. With that, because I've talked at you long enough, and I'll come back for the Q&A, it is my privilege to introduce one of our new senior leaders, our Provost, Fatma Mili. And I'll tell you a little bit about Fatma's background. I told you probably a story in my comment of the 60-year degree, which impressed me so much that she's an individual that cares deeply about all of us as educators and continues to look past the horizon into the future and is comfortable with change. So that's kind of the persona I see. So Fatma is a computer scientist. She started her academic career here in the U.S. after completing her PhD in Paris. Is it Paris? Paris. And came to Oakland University. So was here in Michigan on the other side of the state. And then went on to Purdue, where she led really some of the thinking on redoing and reimagining engineering and computer science into the future, and then to the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, where she was dean, and I'm very pleased to introduce her as our provost, Dr. Fatma Mili.
Thank you so much, Philly, for the introduction. The admiration is more than mutual. Thank you all for inviting me here this morning. And this group and this event are 2 things that really resonate very deeply with me. And I will tell you why. For me, as leaders of a university, I can think of who we serve in 3 different categories. Our alumni, who really own the university. This is their alma mater, their institution, and we are accountable to them for what we do with their institution. The second one is our students, the current students. Obviously, we're here to serve them day in, day out. And the third one is the students of the future. And this is something that for me, is extremely important. We have to be good ancestors. We cannot see the end of sustainability and the end of well-being and so forth with this or the next generation. So in that respect, you can think of yourselves as 1/3 of our constituencies, but I think it's much more than that. Of the 3 groups that we serve, the students of the future don't have a voice. So, and the current students are so much caught up in the day-to-day. And in many respects, the alumni are the most, can be and should be and are the most vocal group because they have that history, that perspective, that education, the bandwidth to really be reflective and to think about what they would like to see happening from their institution. So your voice is extremely valuable in that respect. And in some way, I'm putting some responsibilities in you that you have to keep us straight. You have to keep reminding us of our responsibilities of all our constituencies, not just to alumni. The other reason why this event and this group are very important for me, as President Mantella has mentioned, I am a very strong believer in the fact that in the value of education and in the value of education as a lifetime asset. The term 60 plus year education came from having read the book The 100-Year Life, written by an economist and a sociologist who were looking at life expectancy increasing. Unfortunately, the last data shows that it's not going to continue. At least there is going to be a bump. But the whole idea is life expectancy for people in Japan, students entering the college today have more than 50% chance to live above 100 years. And then the US comes after, and depending on where you are born, being a centenary becomes the norm, pretty much. So with that, the notion that we enter college at 20, graduate at 22, and then enter the job market and retire at 60 doesn't make sense anymore. So they do the back of the envelope calculation and say, if you're going to live until at least 100, then you have to be on the job market until you are 80. And that's and graduating at 20 and thinking that you have a degree that will serve you 60 years later is unthinkable. So if we look at a student graduating today, let's say 2020, do we know what the job market will be in 2080? Do we know that the skills that we're giving them today will serve them then? It would be pretentious of us to believe that or to assume that. So that's the whole idea then. A student, so a Laker today is a Laker for life. A Laker 20 years ago or 30 years ago is also a Laker for life. This means that as higher education institutions, we commit to work with you, alongside you, to help you gain that lifelong learning. And this, in a way, the 60-plus year education is a simplistic in the sense that it assumes we only need education for working. And in many respects, you are an example of the fact that working profession is only a byproduct of education. Education is way more than that. It's much more than that. It's the curiosity, it's the intellectual liveliness that keeps us going and that keeps us curious and interested in the world around us. And that is much more valuable. Its value goes way beyond finding a job or keeping a job or getting a promotion in a job. So given that all of these are things that I feel are very important, are things that I have always been very passionate about, again, this group is really the personification of that. the fact that you are insisting, you are demanding from us that we work with you on this lifelong journey. And I have tremendous respect for that, and also realize that we have a lot to learn in how to do that and how best to do that. Laura and Kara asked me to introduce myself a little bit and give you my sense of what my job is and what is my vision for what I will be doing in the next few years. So I started more than 2 months ago here at GVSU, and my excitement for the place increases by the day. I love the history. I love the energy. I love the diversity of initiatives. I love the commitment of the university. And obviously, I'm very much of, I feel fully aligned and full of admiration for the leadership of the university, and I think I have a place to play here. In summing up what my vision for what I need to do, what my job is as a provost, I know that everybody knows what a president does. Everybody knows what a professor does. Now, what does a provost do? Why are we adding this layer of administration here? And I summarize or think of my job as the storyteller-in-chief. And in that respect, being the storyteller-in-chief, I think of it again as past, present, and future. Being the storyteller-in-chief is honoring and representing the history of this institution. And this institution has a very deep and unique and rich history that we will never celebrate again. We will never make visible again, too visible. So there is a lot of work there in celebrating what this institution, the unique things that this institution has. And it's much easier for somebody who is still 1 foot outside, 1 foot inside to do that, because you get that external view to it. The second part of being the storyteller-in-chief is celebrating the accomplishments of this institutions day in, day out. And again, I have started an academic affairs newsletter since I came. I send one every week, and every week I have 20 or 30 things to report, and I figure which ones do I start with? And all of these are things that really I'm full of admiration for and full of pride to be part of an institution that is doing this. So, for instance, last week we celebrated the fact that GVSU had the gold ranking in terms of sustainability. This week we're celebrating the fact that US News and World Report came out last week, and we have at least 3 of our programs that are in the top 50 or top 100. We know that the US News ranking is very subjective, that its metrics are skewed, that most institutions ride on their coattails. If you're Harvard, you'll always remain Harvard and you'll always be on top. So for a much younger university, every single position that we gain is a position that we have earned 10 times. And in that respect, putting that in perspective is extremely helpful. So as I said, this is every week we have many of these things that we are celebrating. And as a storyteller-in-chief, also I get to shape with everybody in the university and with you what we want to set as a vision for GVSU. So in a way, you could say I'm not a communication person, and yeah, we do have a vice president for communication and external affairs who is extremely skilled and a super leader who will be here this afternoon. So how does academic affairs fit in this? Why am I embracing this role? I will tell you a story that for me illustrates what the power and the joy of storytelling. And this is an old tale of a man walking in the street, and he sees men digging on the side of the road under the sun, sweating. And so he approaches the first one, said, "What are you doing?" He responds, he barely lifts his head, says, "I'm digging dirt." He walks to the second man, "What are you doing?" He lifts his head, smiles, and says, I'm earning a livelihood for my family." And then he goes to the third one, "What are you doing?" He stands up tall and opens his arm to embrace everybody with him and says, "We are building a cathedral here." And that is the power of story. And I think shaping that story and communicating that story and socializing that story is extremely important for us. And that's one part that I love doing, and that I have really been enjoying listening to everyone and understanding what are the themes in GVSU stories, and how can we frame that for the past, for the present, and what should the future look like. And although I am still learning and discovering every day and every week and in every meeting, I think I can safely identify 3 themes that I already see in GVSU's GVSU story, ongoing story. The first one is the fact that this institution is student-centered. And President Mantella mentioned the fact that the first commitment that we make, we are empowering students. That's the foundation of our mission. That's who we are. That's what we do. And I have really been extremely impressed in all of my communications with faculty, with staff, with the deans, the chairs, how much they really breathe this concept of we are student-centered. We are here to make every student feel like they belong. We are here to build every student's dreams. We are here to make sure that every student is successful, not just in their first job, but also in their social life, in their promotion, in their career, in their life in general. It is a tall order, but our faculty and staff embraced with enthusiasm, and they're constantly learning new pedagogies, new approaches, high-impact practices, and adopting them in order to make sure that we are true to that mission of being here for the students, true to the sense that this is what we are here for. The second theme that I see emerging in GVSU's story is its very strong bonds with the community. And the fact that this is a university where the community said one day, we need our own university. We are going to pull our resources together, and we are going to create the university for this region. Really is, to me, defines the DNA of this university. In a way, we have a community who recognize that their major asset is human capacity. They recognize that the best way to develop that human capacity is through higher education. They recognize that the most important human capacity to develop is the curiosity, the lifelong learning, the inquiry, questioning our assumptions, and being open-minded and learning for life. I think that I find that extremely inspiring, and this foundation of a university for the community, of a community embracing its university and supporting it in every possible way, and the university knowing that and reflecting back that bond really defines GVSU in many more ways than, again, in the building, in the programs, in everything that we do. And the third, and I will stop there, theme of GVSU story is the nature of what the university engages in terms of community work, in terms of research, is very purposeful. And when I interviewed, one term that was repeated to me frequently was, we're not an R1 university and we don't want to be an R1 university. And I often wondered, what do they mean? What, does this mean we're not interested in research, or and I just put that on the side, knowing that as I get to know the institution, this will become more clear. And I think now I understand what that is. I know in R1 institution, there is an extremely high competition expectation of how many publications, how many grants, how many PhD students you have graduated, etc. So there is a numbers game. There is a pressure for quantitative production that everybody is under pressure in. When I look at what happens at GVSU, the pressure is not in numbers. The pressure is in impact. I look at every center that exists at GVSU, every significant research that is done at GVSU. It's not done because we have to. It's done because faculty are passionate about this. It's research that is focused on the most important challenges, the most urgent challenges that we face as a species, as a civilization. So the amount of research and engagement that is done around sustainability, around water restoration, around natural resources is really amazing. President Mantella and I were invited yesterday to go to do river cleaning, and that energy and that direct touch is really, there is no better learning than that. There were 24 students who were there, and they kept coming in waves. And for a student to participate in that process, again, the lessons that they learn is much more impactful than listening to a lecture. Again, the amount of the focus of all the scholarship and research at GVSU on things that we think are really important, impactful, and urgent is very visible to me. So there is that hard science aspect, but there is also the social aspect. The fact that we have Center for Civil Discourse, I think it's extremely important, and the awareness about the issues of equity and the issues of civility and so forth are, in a way, the complement to that focus on the hard sciences. So I cannot be any more proud and thrilled to be here. I thank you again for inviting us, and again, your voice is important, and I hope we'll hear it more and more, and I hope that you will keep us honest and keep reminding us of the things that we need to do. Thank you.
So as we mentioned at the outset, or as Pat had mentioned, you have cards and pens at your table. If you have questions to write down, I'll be happy to grab those and facilitate that through Laura. For those folks that are joining us online, there is a Q&A feature as well, and we will be monitoring that and bringing those questions up for both President Mantella and Provost Mili. So for those that are unable to write that down, we do have the microphone to pass as well.
Am I on? There we go. I know that I saw a couple people writing, so feel free. I think we're going to be walking around and grabbing them. Hold up your cards so that we can get them in front of us. And I'm going to get started with a couple that have already made their way to me. And I'm going to start with Fatma. You, I know from past conversations, have identified equity, community sustainability as key focus areas for you and that you've seen the university being particularly strong in. Can you talk a little bit about what those words mean to you? Because I know language is something you spend some time pondering, so I'd love to hear more about how those words have translated into your work thus far.
Thank you so much, Laura. How much time do I have? Okay, so equity. I know we're all successful people here, and we would love to think that we are successful because we're smart and hardworking. And both of them are true, but also I think that we are successful also because we were born in the right place at the right time, and we have received support from lots of people, lots of infrastructure, lots of institutions. We are the product of the institutions that shaped us. And when I say institutions, it's the family, it's the society, it's the museums, it's the schools, it's everything. So, so yes, we do have an individual credit for our success, but the institutions take a very large part of that credit as well. And when we talk about equity, we want to make sure that everybody has the same chances and the same support and the same infrastructure that will help them being successful. Sustainability. I don't think global warming is any more of a question. I know we hear it in the news every day, from flooding and fires and the temperature rising. We used to hear this only from countries that we think are under-resourced, but when we see this past summer with Western European countries really being taken by surprise by the extensive heat, all of these are things that are happening, and somebody needs to do something about that. Now, who is the somebody? I always repeat the fact that universities are unique in the sense that we are not bound by the 4-year or the 1-year or half-year report that we need to submit and that, or re-elections or anything. We really have tenure for life as faculty, and if we do not take a leadership in this, nobody will. So by that I mean we have a huge responsibility in addressing these issues in many different ways.
Thank you. I think this one, there's a couple of questions here that are looking at the reach back to K-12 and recognizing that we perhaps have a role, maybe we do, maybe we don't, to play in K-12 education and ensuring that that students are prepared when they make it to university. So perhaps one of you could chat a little bit about how you're thinking about our work inside of the larger education consortium.
Yeah, I don't think there's one model. Thank you for the question. I don't think there's one model in terms of reaching back. And I think since our primary remit is really about taking students forward, we have to really look at how we particularly do that. So let me speak to Grand Valley. So Grand Valley has a number of opportunities. One, we have a College of Education that has the opportunity to think about the educators of the future who are in K-12 and the different models, the opportunity to support that work and deal with what is, in fact, a crisis in terms of the talent gap for education. Two, we have a charter school with authorizing role with over 80 charter schools. I think we also have an opportunity to look at new structures and supports that urge a student through the course of their high school years to consider how college can be a possibility and how they can contemplate their own needs and do their own evaluation, to be able to help support and educate families around the structures of affordability, the opportunities for financial aid. So there's all sorts of dimensions and you didn't hear me anywhere along the way say, so therefore we start a high school, which has been, in fact, what many universities have done under the rubric of a college of education, is really to play a role in beginning an experimental school or a normal school. And so I think it's about reaching in really new and interesting ways, and ways that we look at the platforms that we have.
Thank you. I think there's a couple of questions that I might point to next in terms of undergraduate coursework, and talking about which of those had the greatest influence on your own life, and of course, where do we have programs in development in terms of undergraduate areas of focus? What are we pulling together as new opportunities for our students?
Well, I think the most sort of profound moment of reckoning for me was in my freshman year when I came. So I'm not going to talk about a specific program, but just that first year course load that I took in college. I was a first generation college student. I was blessed with a loving family who, although it wasn't possible for them, thought it would be possible for all of their 4 children, and was committing to making that so, but was really very much on my own in the journey. So I came from a very small high school and into a very large private university. And after I got by the original kind of like getting into classes, which means I had to deal with the bursar's office and figure out how to pay the $730 I hadn't paid, I got into my classes, and they were so dramatically different, a lot of large lectures, that I just figured that I didn't have to be there in order to learn. I could just, kind of do it deal with my books and myself. And so that was a real awakening when I got my first term grades back, which I'm not going to share with you because you'll tell everyone. But I really recognized that I had to figure out for myself what would work for me in learning. And I took that with me the rest of my life, that, part of what I had to do was to be intentional about how I learn, whether it's coming to a presidency or coming to my first collegiate experience. So, Fatma?
Fatma, maybe you want to talk about some of the coursework we have in development and areas that you're excited to continue to double down on from the undergraduate perspective.
You're changing the question on me now?
I'm not changing the question. It was a 2-part, and I think that Philly spoke to the first part, so unfortunately or fortunately for you, you're getting part number 2 of that question.
So one of the reasons why I really loved coming to GVSU is the rootedness in liberal arts education, and I'm a strong believer in the need for a holistic approach to education. If you're forming computer scientists, they have to have enough. We have to address the whole human being. So in terms of new programs that are being developed, I know we have a proposal for a data science coming through from computing, but more maybe the impact is much more on the number of high impact practices that our colleagues are adopting, and the dean and a number of faculty members from the leadership of class spent a summer, went this summer for a workshop that updated them on the latest research on how do we retain students, how do we keep students engaged. And this is a mix both of content and pedagogy.
For that, very much appreciated. And I'm going to serve as a time check for our provost, whom I know does need to depart at 11. So you have about 1 minute left just for that time check. But I'll pose here a question. We talked about the commitment to lifelong learning. Can you talk about how Grand Forum lives into that commitment to lifelong learning? How do you see it changing and growing in the years ahead?
I think by definition, Grand Forum is about lifelong learning. And this is what I mentioned in the introduction. And I know that the breadth of what you do or what you are interested in is very broad, and actually I would be very curious to know what are the things that we can offer that would be of value to you that you would find interesting.
Yeah, I think we're really excited about the Grand Forum and the opportunities going into the future. I think Fatma spoke to the areas of substance and interest and offering. We, just by today's event, you can see that we've added a new modality to reach those who can't be with us physically, and I think that's a really exciting opportunity. And as our community that engages with the university grows and our alumni grows, I think there's opportunities to see not just one model, but an evolution of again, a kind of a tapestry of programming that can support what I expect to be varied interests of our Grand Forum members.
We'll just close with one last, if you have any closing comments, or otherwise, we have one closing question.
I just wanted to thank everyone, and again, to iterate to you my excitement of being here. Being led by Philly is such a pleasure, and having a group of co-leaders. Laura is one of them. You will meet the other ones in the afternoon. I'm sure you will share you would understand why I feel very confident and very excited about being part of this group. Thank you.
Much to our provost for joining us. And I will pitch this last question to you. How are we thinking about students from a holistic experience? We know that they don't come to us just as learners, but whole people who have mental, spiritual, physical needs. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about that as we structure our work with our students?
Yeah, I mean, there's two. I mean, that is just ever pressing, right? When you talk about empowering someone and understanding their passions and strengths, you're presuming that, first of all, we start with a question. There's a lot of times that when I'm meeting with students, they'll say, I've never actually had people ask me these questions, you know. So we want to be curious about our students. That's number one. And we want to really understand what their dreams and aspirations are. I think that's where we've got to start. And find ways, like we do with grades, to contain that information and watch it evolve over time. So one thing we're doing is we're experimenting in not only our business classes in Seidman, where this began, with our MBA students, with a kind of evaluation that many of us have taken, right? Where you say, like, how do you think? And how do you process information? How do you tend to lead? But having students do that work. So we bring another dimension. You know your grades, and you know your test scores, but what do you know about the way you process information? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? How do you think and work in environments and teams? So that's an area where we're exploring, because we think about mapping those sort of key dimensions and having that live with the students throughout their lifetime. So I was going to give a second example, but it's just flown out of my head right now. So hopefully that was illustrative enough for you to know how excited we are to really support. I know what it was. See, I thought if I talk long enough, it would come back, and it did. We are putting a particular emphasis in our student life area. One of the people you'll meet today is the Vice President of Student Affairs, who is thinking about well-being. Well-being and belonging and the broadest of constructs. And we know that through the pandemic, you know, that's something that we really have, a spotlight was put on the notions of well-being and isolation and community and connection. And so an area of emphasis in our student life area is going to focus on those dimensions. How do you connect a health center and a recreation facility, and the digital ability that some of us have to track our steps, to our own sort of biorhythms? How do you connect all that in a construct of well-being? So on the notion of well-being, let me end by wishing you all well and thanking you for the opportunity to be with you today. And I look forward to not waiting another 3 years. Ron, is there anything that's coming up that you want to, you know, as the futurist? I'll be back here next year. It's okay? Absolutely. All right, good. Thank you very much.